this happens. There is effort to seek out the heterosexual security risk. And I think that the heterosexual security risk is more avidly harassed and sought after than the homosexual.
I have no idea, of course, and no statistics on how much of all of that comes out of cloak and dagger novels and how much of it actually exists. As far as the homosexuals are concerned, my own acquaintanceship with the Washington homosexual community certainly is not small. I get calls from time to time from people who are being subjected to blackmail for money and have no slightest intention of submitting and want to know what to do. So I take them to the police department with their consent, and the police department handles these things beautifully. We're quite proud of our Washington Police Department on this. I have yet to hear of a single solitary case involving an attempt to obtain information. And I just told the Defense Department the other day that I'm not really sure, in fact I'm practically convinced, that they don't exist at all.
Now, you have here your whole history of the State Department, of your contact with the State Department.
Yes.
The whole story can be dismissed by saying you did your best to contact them and they refused to answer your mail.
It's a standard governmental policy, practice on this, yes.
Was there any government official who wasn't speaking for the government but just speaking for himself ever look you in the face snarling at me and say, "Oh no, you get out of here, I ain't going to deal with no queer about crying out"?
They haven't said it in quite that attitude, but in quite that manner. However, in the case of the Civil Service Commission, for example, we wrote to them back in 1962 asking, as citizens, as American citizens, as first-class citizens in a country that claims it does not have second-class citizens, asking to meet with them to discuss what we felt to be our grievances. This is proper, and one expects that our government will do it. After all, Governor Wallace a few years back finally met with Negroes in Alabama. Why shouldn't our own government meet with its homosexual citizens? And we got back a letter from Mr. Macy, the chairman of the commission, saying that the conference for which you ask would serve no useful purpose. And we continued to write through 1962 and 1963 and on into 1964. And then we gave up for a bit. And we wrote again in April of 1965. And Mr. Macy wrote back saying, "We have just reconsidered our policies with regard to homosexuals and have decided not to change them." And we wrote back and said that we thought under our American system, when you consider policies which are going to affect large groups of citizens, you consult the citizens involved. We are not aware of a single homosexual citizen who was consulted in your reconsideration of this policy. We got no answer. So then we wrote to Mr. Macy and said our plans are well advanced to picket the Civil Service Commission. We much prefer negotiation and discussion to demonstration. We are always ready to negotiate and discuss, but it takes two sides to do so. Will you meet with us? And we got no answer. So we prepared to picket, and we usually send out a press release before we picket. Most of our demonstrations were on Saturdays. The press release usually goes out on a Wednesday. 72 hours before that, and this is our standard practice. We're not trying to create, we again much prefer a constructive approach than just to create dissension. We sent Mr. Macy a copy of the press release saying this is being sent to you 72 hours before it is being sent to anybody else anywhere. We still prefer to meet with you rather than to picket. Will you meet with us? And we got back a letter saying the meeting for which you request will serve no useful purpose. So we picketed and got publicity. Following this, after this, we sent a follow-up letter. And the follow-up letter said in effect, but in much smoother language than I'm about to use, said in effect, well, we said we were going to picket and we did. Now will you meet with us? And 3 years to the day after we sent our first letter, we got back a letter saying we will meet with you. That is what it takes for American citizens, first-class citizens, to deal with their public officials when homosexuality comes into the matter.
Dr. Kameny,
they are frightened to death of Congress.
It seems to me that your point would not be in the slightest weakened if you were to stand back and catalog many cases where homosexuals have let America down because of this personal condition of theirs and this vulnerability to blackmail. I didn't come prepared with such a catalog because I didn't know you were going to deny that.